The morning began like any other, the aroma of brewing coffee filling our kitchen in Fairfield, Connecticut. My wife, Eleanor, was already up, meticulously preparing her organic smoothie. Then the phone rang. It was her sister, Clara, I heard. Eleanor's voice dropped to a concerned whisper, then her eyes widened with alarm. She hung up, turning to me with a furrowed brow. Claire's having a really rough time, she announced, her voice heavy with worry. Morning sickness, bad. She can barely keep anything down. One offered my sympathy. Clara and her husband, Mark, had been trying for a baby for years, and this pregnancy, due in March 2025, was a celebrated miracle. Later that week, the visits began. Clara, pale and fragile, would arrive at our house, seeking refuge from what she described as unbearable nausea. Eleanor was a doting sister, fussing over her, making bland toast, and keeping the house quiet. But then a bizarre pattern emerged. Every time I was in the kitchen, preparing my usual simple breakfast, a bowl of oatmeal, a piece of fruit, Clara's nausea would seemingly worsen. She'd gag, then rush to the bathroom. Eleanor's eyes would narrow at me. "Can't you just not cook that right now, David?" She'd snap, her tone sharp, accusing. I was a recently retired construction project manager, used to early mornings and straightforward tasks, but this was baffling. It started with oatmeal, then toast, then even the faint smell of my coffee. Soon, I was banished from the kitchen in the mornings, forced to eat cold cereal in silence. Eleanor, with growing frequency, began blaming my very presence, my cooking, my scent, for Clara's worsening symptoms. "It's your fault, David," she'd sigh dramatically. "You're making her sicker." This wasn't just bizarre. It was a deeply unsettling accusation, chipping away at the foundation of our once solid, unremarkable life. My home, my routine, suddenly felt like a hostile territory. For 3 decades, my wife, Eleanor, and I, a dedicated construction project manager, had built what I genuinely believed was an unshakable life together in our comfortable home in Fairfield, Connecticut. Our journey had been one of steady progress, of shared responsibilities, and mutual respect. We navigated the beautiful complexities of raising our 2 children, Michael and Sarah, from their first hesitant steps to their confident independence, seeing them off to college, then into their own flourishing careers. We celebrated countless anniversaries, each one a testament to our enduring partnership, marked by quiet dinners, exchanged gifts, and heartfelt reflections on the journey we had embarked upon together. Our dreams for a tranquil retirement, a serene period of peace and shared hobbies, were not vague aspirations but concrete plans, discussed over evening walks through our quiet neighborhood and warm cups of tea. We envisioned long-awaited cruises, leisurely afternoons tending our garden, perhaps even taking up painting or joining a local history club. Our home, a testament to years of hard work and shared memories, our predictable routines and the unspoken language of our shared dreams. These were the unwavering anchors of my existence. My trust in Eleanor was absolute, a profound and unwavering belief in her loyalty, forged through shared joys and weathered storms, a bond that felt like an extension of my very self. Then, imperceptibly at first, the small changes began to ripple through the placid surface of our routine. Eleanor, always a meticulous planner, became subtly more preoccupied, her attention fragmented. Her phone, once openly displayed on the kitchen counter or living room coffee table, became a guarded extension of her hand, frequently clutched face down, often taken to another room if it chimed during a family conversation. Her spa days and charity meetings grew in frequency and length, accompanied by vague explanations and an unusual lack of detailed anecdotes upon her return. "Oh, just the usual gossiping about Mrs. Henderson's new drapes," she'd say with a dismissive wave, or charity work is just so exhausting, darling, you wouldn't understand. I dismissed these shifts as harmless, attributing them to her renewed interest in social life post-kids, telling myself she deserved her freedom, her own pursuits after years of dedicated motherhood. After all, I had my golf foursome, my own, professional commitments before retirement. It seemed only fair, only natural for a couple to have individual interests. Yet, despite my conscious efforts to rationalize these subtle shifts, a persistent nagging whisper of unease began to echo in the quiet corners of my mind. It wasn't a loud accusation, but a subtle, unsettling discord in the familiar harmony of our daily lives. The way she'd flinch if I reached for her phone when it vibrated, the sudden tension in her shoulders when a specific notification chimed. These fleeting moments chipped away at my certainty. I tried to ignore the growing discomfort, to squash the burgeoning doubt, constantly reminding myself of our long history, our deep, enduring connection. I didn't want to be the suspicious husband, the one who questioned everything, who saw shadows where there were none. But the whisper persisted, a low, insistent hum beneath the surface of my consciousness, making me feel subtly off-kilter, as if the ground beneath my feet was no longer as solid as it once was. The true unraveling, however, began with Clara's pregnancy, announced joyfully in September 2024. My sister-in-law, Clara, and her husband, Mark, had been trying for a baby. For years, undergoing numerous fertility treatments, enduring heartbreak after heartbreak. This pregnancy, due in March 2025, was truly a celebrated miracle for our entire family, a beacon of hope and happiness. We all rejoiced, offering our support and excitement. Clara's initial bouts of morning sickness were, of course, expected. Eleanor, always the doting, fiercely protective older sister, immediately sprang into action, offering comfort, advice, and endless bowls of bland, ginger-infused teas. Then the almost daily visits began. Clara, looking genuinely pale and fragile, would arrive at our house, seeking refuge from what she described as unbearable nausea at her own place. Eleanor was a whirlwind of sisterly devotion, fussing over her, preparing dry toast, keeping the house quiet, shielding Clara from any perceived discomfort. But it was during these visits that a bizarre, deeply unsettling pattern began to emerge, slowly, almost insidiously. Every time I was in the kitchen, navigating my routine, preparing my usual simple breakfast, a modest bowl of plain oatmeal, a piece of fresh fruit, a single slice of whole wheat toast, Clara's nausea would inexplicably worsen. She'd gag loudly, dramatically, then rush to the bathroom, her hand clamped over her mouth. And each time, Eleanor's eyes would narrow at me, a silent accusation burning in their depths. "Can't you just not cook that right now, David?" She'd snap, her tone sharp, edged with a coldness that shocked me. "You're making her sicker." I was baffled, confused by the blatant absurdity of it. My oatmeal, my toast. These were bland, innocuous foods, but the accusations escalated. It started with Eleanor demanding I refrain from cooking in the mornings entirely, then progressed to banning me from making coffee, even toasting bread, claiming the faintest scent triggered Clara's worsening symptoms. Soon, I was effectively banished from our own kitchen in the mornings, forced to eat cold cereal in silence in the dining room, a guest in my own home. Eleanor, with growing frequency and an increasing lack of compassion, began blaming my very presence, my cooking, my scent, my very essence, for Clara's worsening symptoms. "It's your fault, David," she'd sigh dramatically, her voice dripping with martyred suffering, as if I were intentionally poisoning her sister. "You're clearly making her sicker. You're not being considerate." This wasn't just bizarre. It was a deeply unsettling, wholly illogical accusation designed to isolate and undermine me. It chipped away at the foundation of our once solid, unremarkable marriage, transforming our home, our routines, and even my own self-perception into something hostile, something subtly menacing. The once comforting walls of my home now felt like a prison of escalating, inexplicable blame. The initial shock of being blamed for Clara's nausea slowly congealed into a cold, simmering fury within me. My simple request to use my own kitchen had been met with a level of irrational anger that was deeply unsettling. The constant accusations, the escalating demands for me to tiptoe around my own home, the absurd notion that my morning oatmeal could induce such severe reactions, it all gnawed at me. Sleep became restless, punctuated by replays of Eleanor's sharp words, Clara's dramatic retching, and the growing sense of being an unwelcome intruder in my own life. My mind, usually focused on the quiet pleasures of retirement, now worked overtime, dissecting every bizarre interaction, searching for a logical explanation. I feigned normalcy during the day, maintaining a polite, if distant, demeanor with Eleanor, but inside, a complex, silent investigation had already begun. The turning point came when Eleanor's demands escalated beyond mere morning inconveniences. Clara's fragility became the central focus of our household. Eleanor began to insist that I take on an increasing number of responsibilities to alleviate Clara's supposed stress. This wasn't just about cooking, it was about everything. Clara needs peace and quiet to rest, Eleanor would announce. Meaning I couldn't watch TV in the living room if Clara was napping, couldn't use my power tools in the garage, couldn't even have friends over. You need to drive Clara to her prenatal appointments, she commanded, citing Clara's extreme nausea as a reason Mark couldn't take her. This meant rearranging my already established retirement routine, which included volunteer work at the local community center and regular golf games with my old construction buddies. I found myself becoming Clara's chauffeur, her errand boy, even her reluctant emotional support system when Eleanor was too busy. Clara would sometimes apologize, her eyes downcast. "I'm so sorry, David. I just feel so terrible." But her apologies never translated into any change in Eleanor's behavior. Her demands stopped, the requests became more audacious. Clara needs a really calm environment, Eleanor declared one evening in November 2024. So Mark is staying with his parents for a few weeks. Clara will be staying here with us. My jaw nearly dropped. Mark, Clara's husband, would move out, and Clara, who supposedly couldn't tolerate my presence, would move in. The illogic of it was staggering, but Eleanor presented it as a non-negotiable decree for the baby's health. With Clara's arrival, my life in my own home became almost unbearable. My study, my sanctuary, was suddenly deemed too close to Clara's temporary bedroom, so I was relegated to a guest room that doubled as a storage closet. My evenings were spent in forced silence, unable to even listen to my own music. The insidious pattern of control tightened. I discovered Eleanor had quietly canceled my annual physical, scheduled for early December, claiming she forgot to reschedule after Clara's needs took precedence. This was more than just an inconvenience. It was a disturbing echo of the previous betrayal involving my ex-wife, Sarah, and her disregard for my health. While not life-threatening surgery, this physical was crucial for a man my age, a routine checkup that suddenly felt like a battle to maintain my own well-being. It sparked a deeper suspicion within me. Was this negligence? Or was it a calculated erosion of my independence, a slow chipping away at my control over my own life? The realization sent a cold shiver down my spine. It became clear this wasn't just about Clara's morning sickness. This was about Eleanor's absolute control, her manipulation of a sympathetic situation to exert dominance and exploit my good nature. The constant blaming, the unreasonable demands, the blatant disregard for my own well-being. It felt like a calculated strategy. My calm facade began to crack under the weight of this psychological siege. My friends noticed my increasing fatigue, my distractedness. "Everything all right, David?" my golf buddy Tom asked one afternoon. I just nodded, a hollow shell. How could I explain that my wife was slowly, systematically turning my own home into a prison, all under the guise of sisterly care? Then the final, undeniable piece of the puzzle clicked into place, turning my simmering resentment into a cold, terrifying resolve. While discreetly searching for a misplaced book in Eleanor's rarely used home office, a room she now claimed, was Clara's quiet zone, I found a hidden folder on her computer. Inside, amongst what looked like innocent financial documents, was a series of emails between Eleanor and Clara, not just about Clara's pregnancy, but about Clara's fake pregnancy. The nausea, the extreme sensitivity to smells, the constant need for attention. It was all a meticulously choreographed act. Clara had never been pregnant. She had suffered a devastating miscarriage months prior, in August 2024, but had chosen to conceal it from everyone, especially Mark, desperate to hold on to the dream of a child. Eleanor, instead of encouraging honesty, had agreed to perpetuate the lie, to deceive everyone, including Mark and even their own parents. And to facilitate this elaborate deception, they needed a scapegoat, someone to absorb the blame for Clara's symptoms and to become her tireless servant. That scapegoat was me. My rage, once simmering, became a roaring inferno, tempered by an icy precision. This wasn't just about my dignity. It was about protecting my future, my sanity, and exposing a truly monstrous deception that had consumed my entire life for months. The truth, stark and undeniable, hit me with a force that transcended mere anger. It was a profound sense of utter betrayal that left me breathless. Clara wasn't pregnant. The entire elaborate charade, from the fabricated morning sickness to the escalating demands on my time and comfort, had been a meticulously choreographed performance, a cruel deception designed to manipulate everyone around them. And I, the retired electrical engineer, the reliable husband, had been cast as the unwitting fool, the convenient scapegoat for a fictional ailment. My initial rage, now fully ignited, quickly settled into the same chilling, calculating calm that had served me so effectively during my first wife's betrayal. There would be no shouting, no immediate confrontation. That would only give Eleanor and Clara a chance to spin more lies, to play the victims. My revenge would be cold, precise, and utterly devastating, striking at the very core of their carefully constructed illusion. Sleep became a distant memory. My mind worked tirelessly, dissecting every detail of their emails, every lie, every manipulative request. I replayed Eleanor's accusing words, Clara's feigned gags, and the endless stream of demands, all now illuminated by the horrifying truth. The realization that they had weaponized my compassion, exploited my willingness to care for family, fueled a profound and unyielding resolve. My focus sharpened. If they could fake a pregnancy to control me, what else were they capable of? My priority was to expose their entire scheme, not just the fake pregnancy, but the systematic way they had invaded my life, my home, and my peace, using me as their personal puppet. I needed to act decisively to dismantle their elaborate lie. Brick by painful brick, I began gathering irrefutable evidence meticulously and with ruthless efficiency. The emails I had discovered were the cornerstone. I used my skills as a retired electrical engineer, honed over decades of meticulous problem solving, to ensure every message was securely downloaded and backed up, preserving their authenticity and metadata. These were not just vague accusations. They were direct communications detailing their plans to keep the miscarriage secret from Mark, their cunning strategy to fabricate symptoms, and their explicit discussions about making me the primary caregiver for the ailing Clara. thereby freeing Eleanor's time for her own hidden pursuits. The extent of their planning was chilling. They had even discussed how to eventually explain the phantom baby's disappearance. A truly macabre thought. Next, I turned my attention to Clara's medical records. Through a trusted, discreet contact who worked in healthcare administration, I confirmed that there were no recent pregnancy records for Clara beyond the initial confirmation of miscarriage in August 2024, the subsequent appointments she supposedly attended, the prenatal scans Eleanor had claimed to drive her to, fabrications. This confirmed my suspicion that Eleanor was complicit not just in the lie, but in its active maintenance enabling Clara's deception. I also discreetly started documenting every instance of Clara's nausea when I was nearby, the specific foods or smells that supposedly triggered her, juxtaposing this with the emails showing them planning these episodes. This evidence would highlight the sheer theatricality of their performance. My cold pursuit extended to Eleanor's recent activities. Freed from her husband duties of tending to Clara's fake pregnancy, Eleanor had indeed used her newfound free time for her own undisclosed activities. I hired a discreet private investigator, an old acquaintance from my military days, to follow Eleanor during her frequent charity meetings and spa days. What he uncovered was not a romantic affair, but a hidden addiction to high-stakes gambling at an underground poker club in a neighboring town. She had been secretly draining our joint savings, the very funds earmarked for our peaceful retirement, to feed her spiraling habit, covering her tracks with fabricated expenses and blaming her financial woes on my supposed tightness with money. The emergency that kept her from the hospital on the eve of my initial surgery, it had been a desperate attempt to cover a massive gambling debt, a frantic transfer of funds that directly led to my procedure's cancellation. This was a new layer of betrayal, a far more insidious and financially devastating one, far beyond the initial, simpler infidelity of my ex-wife.